Lamp is lit. Oh, there we go. The recording's in progress. Is there anyone else that's lurking out there, Carrie, or is that everybody?
That's everybody.
Okay, great. Welcome to an Islesboro Board of Appeals meeting. This should be a fairly short meeting. First off, we need to establish our quorum, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 members of the appeals board in attendance, 3 by Zoom and 2 here in the room. So that constitutes a quorum. So that is good news. We can proceed. The first order of business is approval of the minutes from our November 2024 and our January 2025 meetings. Those were distributed to everybody. Does anyone have any questions about those minutes? Can I get a motion to approve those minutes?
I move.
Can I get a second?
My second.
I have one question though. I can help approve the December meeting because I was there, but the other meetings I was not present, so I can't vote on those.
All right,
So
fine.
should we do them individually?
We'll do
then?
them individually then. So first we have a motion to approve the November 2024 meeting. And we have a second on that from, was it Susan?
Yes.
We need to have a roll call because we're doing this Zoom. So, Tom,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Patrick, yes, Ben. He says yes.
But he wasn't at that meeting.
Oh, but you weren't at that meeting, so never mind. Okay, so we've approved it 4-0. So
And Ben is an alternate,
Ben is an alternate.
so you have to actually give him voting.
I give Ben Dove voting rights.
Thank you.
Since we need the alternate for tonight. Okay, now we will go to approve the January 2025 minutes. That was the meeting where all we did was approve the regulations for holding Zoom meetings, which we successfully are doing. So can I get a motion to approve the January meeting minutes? Peter
I so
moves,
moved. Oh.
Susan
I'll
seconds.
second.
Any discussion?
No.
Tommy? Oh, you weren't here. Susan,
I'll abstain.
Tommy's abstaining. Susan?
I approve.
Ben? Approve?
He wasn't here either.
Yeah.
Oh, you weren't here for that one either. This is going on your permanent record. Peter, you were here
I approve.
and I was here. I approved. So that's approved. So the minutes have been approved. We're just rocketing right along through things. I see our town attorney here. Hello. And who else?
Tom Dexter.
Who's above Tom Dexter there?
Oh, I don't know. Who is this on iPhone 14?
that John Kerr?
Oh, is that John?
John, is that you on iPhone 14? I think
Yes,
so.
that's me that is me.
Great. All right.
Oh, so.
All right. So that takes care of the administrivia. All I want to do tonight, we have an appeal that's pending. I wanted to discuss the policies and procedures for holding a Board of Appeals meeting, a Board of Appeals hearing. And those are outlined both in our ordinance, which is Town Ordinance 15, and also in the Maine Municipal Association's Board of Appeals Manual. I will go through this stuff and then we can have a little discussion if we want to, but I'm trying to make sure that we are all on the same page for this. We will be hearing appeals from the planning board decision on an appellate basis under chapter 125, which is land use, and under chapter 45, which is developmental review. We may reverse the planning board decision only if their decision is, quote, contrary to specific provisions of the ordinance and contrary to the facts presented. The appellate review, the body of evidence we use to hear and make the appeal, is limited strictly to the recordings and records of the planning board decision. There is no new material, no new evidence introduced. We can receive oral and written arguments from the applicant, the appellants, and abutters. And we will try and set out a schedule for that in terms of the written argument. But those arguments, again, are based solely upon the records that were provided to the planning board in making the decision. No new information is considered. So we may remand the whole thing back to the planning board for additional fact finding if we choose. And the parties may present their case through oral or documentary evidence. These are these arguments that we were talking about. You can submit rebuttal evidence and conduct cross-examination at the appeal, and you have the right to be represented by counsel. The appeals manual that the Maine Municipal Association put out talks about the process for actually holding the meeting. We will determine if there is a quorum present. We will determine whether we need to use alternate members of the Board of Appeals. We will figure out whether or not the appeals, in this case, have been filed within the required deadline. We will determine whether required notices have been given for the meeting. We will then summarize the appeal, outline what type of jurisdiction we're going to be operating under. In other words, what type of review is going to be conducted, which ordinance gives us our jurisdiction, and whether this is an appellate or a de novo appeal. And from everything I can read so far, this is an appellate appeal. We will discuss whether anyone on the Board of Appeals has a conflict of interest. We will figure out whether the applicant has standing to appeal. I will explain the rules of the proceeding, the extent of public comments and questions. I run the meeting as the chair. I recognize board members and public speakers. I entertain motions, rulings on relevance of question, and I maintain order. And I will be maintaining order. The sequence of presentations, the applicant goes first and has the right to make his presentation with no questions, all the way through from A to Z. Questions then are provided to the chair, and I submit the questions to the applicant. I ask the applicant the questions. It's not a free-for-all. We then will have a presentation by abutters. And if it becomes a free-for-all, people are going to be asked to leave. It is going to be limited to the information that was presented to the planning board strictly. And ultimately, the Board of Appeals decision is whether the planning board's decision was contrary to specific provisions of the ordinance. That's the rule that we're trying to decide. That's the yardstick we're using. We can send stuff back to the planning board if we want, but we don't have to. We can say, yes, we think the planning board followed all the rules in the ordinance and approve their decision, or we can say, no, we don't think they did, and we can shoot it down. All of this will be public, and that's the way it's going to happen. We have a grand total of 12 appeals, and we will have to rule on each one of them. And the big thing that I want to get handled. So does anyone have any questions about that as our our marching orders for the actual appeal hearing.
Patrick, I have a question.
Okay,
We have 12 appeals. Will we have to go through that entire sequence of events, of presentations, questioning, cross-examination for each appeal, or will we have one presentation? And then with all of that information in hand, will we then as a board go through the 12 appeals and rule on them?
good question. Patrick Lyons, do you have an opinion on this? Do we have to deal with each appeal individually, or can we lump them by appellant?
You can lump them by appellant, because as I understand it, of these appeals, there were 12 filed, but the majority of them were filed by a single appellant. And
Correct.
so yeah, I think for the Seekman appeals 1 through 11, we can treat appellant Seekman as one individual appellant, and then there's appellant Dexter. So those are the two appellants as I'm aware of. So I think we'll just consolidate all the arguments, and we'll address basically them as two appellants, and then there'll be the applicant.
That sounds good to me. Otherwise, we'd be here until this time next year.
Yeah, no one. I'll make sure help you guys streamline that as much as possible.
Any other questions on the process? So the next issue that I have, Carrie Reed has done fantastic scanning all of the documentation that was submitted to the planning board. And my understanding is that we have it all online for the Board of Appeals to review. And Patrick, we need to get the secret handshake in order to get access to that, so that the Board of Appeals members can start reviewing all that material.
Yeah, I think on that note, what would make the most sense is I'll work with town staff, everyone that's been working on it to, is this the universe of planning board's record? Then I'd like to, I'll invite the town's attorney that was advising the planning board to confirm that, Attorney Collins. And then once we have an agreement there, then what we'll do is we'll provide access to this data room, as we're calling it, it's a digital, it's like Dropbox, it's called ShareFile. And we'll provide access to all Board of Appeals members and all the applicant and the appellants, so everyone can be working from the same. They can work with the town staff to prepare that. And then I think another way, I think is helpful as well is when we set out and I can work with the chair to set out filing deadlines for briefs, and we can also have the parties upload their briefs to this share file. We'll make a separate subfolder. So that should help keep everything there, so everyone's just operating off the same playbook, so to speak.
Great. Yeah, I love having the briefs put into the share file thing. That sounds terrific. So,
one thing I wanted to note, excuse my interruption. I believe your rules require rebuttal, that the parties are allowed to submit rebuttal evidence. And while the record is closed, so again, they can submit, I don't know, we may want to interpret that as to, the rebuttal argument. And one consideration, and the chair and I can discuss this as well, because I would say it's in his purview as chair, is whether in addition to the primary briefs, we want to allow the parties time to file kind of what's called a reply brief. In essence, the parties can file their brief in main and their primary brief, and that give them another week to review the other part, or we figure out a time frame, but give them time to review the briefs, and if they want to submit kind of a rebuttal reply argument in writing, give them time to do that prior to the hearing. That I think that might might help streamline and clarify these arguments, and then just save the rest for then they have the opportunity to argue before you orally at the hearing. So again, we can work those out, but I wanted to suggest that might be a way forward.
Okay, that sounds great. The question I have, and I haven't seen the whole corpus of data yet, I've seen a lot of it, is how long do people think it's going to take for the Board of Appeals members to go through this and get a handle on it? This is pretty complicated stuff. And I would like to make sure that everybody on the Board of Appeals feels comfortable going into a hearing and feeling like they have a handle on this, and that we're not going in unprepared, exactly. I mean, Patrick, do you have a sense of how long this normally takes, or once we get?
So I would say that, I mean, everyone's different, right? And but generally speaking, if we have, once we have we can confirm we have the record, in its entirety, we can give access to everyone to review that. And I think following, we'll have, I think there's kind of, I guess, 4 dates we want to kind of lay out for everyone to be aware of. The date saying, hey, we're going to say the record's final on date X. From date X, the parties will have X amount of time to review, to file their brief. Then the parties we'll just say a week to file a reply brief. And then we will say that, the board will then have time, then the meeting will be, the hearing will be X amount of weeks after we receive that reply brief. And so we can, if we wanted to kind of reverse engineer that, we could say, okay, if we want to have a hearing date on March X, how do we work this backwards to get a schedule where then it gives time for the board to be able to see the record and then review the briefs as they come in. The briefs, hopefully will be helpful to the board in citing to specific aspects of the record. So while the board wants to be familiar with the entire record, not every issue, every aspect of the planning board's approval is, on appeal, so they could focus on what's relevant. But I guess that's a long way of saying I would propose some kind of schedule along those lines, and we can pick a hearing date and work back to come up with a schedule that allows for time for people to review. But I would, if a month between when the record is final and then the hearing, and then maybe it's 2 weeks after the record's final that the parties submit their briefs, following week for a reply, and then 1 or 2 more weeks before the hearing itself, something along those lines.
Okay. So that'd be looking at, I mean, if the record is confirmed to be complete by the end of this week. There we go. Oh, that one doesn't work. If we're ready to, if the record's complete by February 21st or something, and we wanted to shoot for March 21st as a hearing date, that might be doable.
Yeah, I think I might give yourself 1 more week. I don't know if
exactly.
I don't know if are you planning on having a hearing on a Friday? Is that the plan?
I don't have a preference, although it would be fun to have the hearing on April Fool's Day. And we could always do that.
I'd be all for a April Fool's Day hearing.
It just leaped out at me there.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Yeah,
you might want to
most
avoid a
people don't
Friday.
want Fridays. Yeah, I mean, sorry. Oh, the White House. I mean, we could do it like the 27th of March, or the 2nd of April, on Wednesday or something. I mean, somewhere at the end of March, the beginning of April, and we'll finalize it, or get it squared away here pretty quickly, particularly once we know whether we've got the record complete. But I think it's reasonable to say that we're looking at this at the tail end of March, the beginning of April for the actual hearing. And that should give plenty of time for people to get their ducks in order in terms of schedules and stuff like that.
Maybe we, after following, maybe tomorrow, or we can confer, and we can, the chair and I can come up with a proposed schedule and get that in front of everyone. I think it would be good tonight to at least select a hearing date with all the board here, that works for folks. And so I thought that I like the April Fool's Day proposal. But also it's, I don't know if that works for the board, the members of the board, then we can kind
Is
of
there a
work back.
day of the week, is there a day of the week that works better for board members than any other day? I mean,
It depends on what's happening each week, so, if this is set ahead of time enough, probably a Friday would be best for me. But I have a question about this, which is, if, as we go through the completed file, it becomes clear that we need more time to hash these things over, to understand everything. Is the hearing date set in stone, or can that be adjusted?
I think we can adjust it if we need to.
Okay, that's my only reservation about setting up such a fast schedule.
For me, I will be actually back on the island March 21st. And I certainly can attend Zoom meetings between now and then, though I will be on the road traveling from March 1st through March 8th. Those would be tough days for me to attend.
Yeah, I don't think anything will be happening between now and then, other than, maybe providing access to the record through the Dropbox or whatever.
Patrick, March 27th is actually fully booked.
Well, then that won't be that day.
Right. The first week of April is wide open.
Yeah, I think we're probably looking at the first week of April, and I was just being a wise guy when I said April Fools, but we could certainly do it that first week of April.
Just as the board's attorney, I have a conflict on that Thursday, the 3rd, but otherwise my schedule is open for that week, for evening meetings.
In communication with everybody in terms of schedule and access to the planning board record. And we will take it from there. Does anyone have any questions at all? Yes.
Can the
Mr. Cowell.
appellant have access to the same record that the board is having access to?
We were just talking that they would, yes.
That's it.
The appellant and the applicant will have access.
Yeah, we will establish this data room, and the share file will be, that's the record. We'll make sure everyone's in agreement. And then this is the record. So any evidence that they would point to in any of their arguments would have to come from that, universe of record materials.
Sounds good. Anything else? Cool. Can I get a motion to adjourn? I move. A second? Somebody second, come on.
I second.
Okay, let's see. We have to go roll call. Tommy,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Ben. Ben's muted because he's in the car. He's waving yes. Peter,
Yes.
Patrick, yes. All right, we're adjourned. Thanks, everybody. Go home.